Hi, I am Dr. Kim Sage. Welcome to episode 2 of Wildly Loved, my series on helping us all check in each day, hopefully at least Monday through Friday during the week, and really love on each other to grow and heal from often wounding childhoods and relationships in our adult lives. So today's video is about toxic shame, because as I'm beginning this series and we're talking about trauma brain sort of being the overarching dynamic, the way our brain has learned to, or at least did adapt in childhood, but often gets stuck in the same operating mode as it was in childhood, even though we're no longer there. Shame is often at the core. As I've said, I do believe that I am bad is often the core wound of emotionally unsafe childhoods, and certainly of complex PTSD and relational type wounds. Because so often these things happen in childhood, I'm going to talk about it from the lens of childhood, but also throw in some examples of what it might look like in your adult life too. So as we talk about toxic shame, it is true, as I said, for childhood wounds, but as a basic emotion, shame is a very basic human emotion. And there is a very strong social theory that shame evolved as part of helping us maintain social hierarchies. And alongside that is a conversation and research around the relationship between shame and disgust. And that oftentimes disgust often help us not engage in risky, like contamination behaviors that could put the entire self or tribe at risk. And if you think about shame as sort of a very social feeling, right, being shamed might be a good thing as part of a group if back in the cave days you were doing something that was putting us at risk or was going to sabotage our future well-being or dynamics. But the bottom line is that in traumatic childhoods especially, shame often is the predominant motivating principle behind everything that we are trying to avoid and do. And it really just drenches us in who we are. And so the difference between, let's say, a healthy shame, or often called guilt, is, as we've talked about, that might look like I did something bad or wrong, not I am bad or wrong, which is really the heart of toxic shame. So let's go through a little bit and talk about what some examples might look like in a childhood that shame might become part of who you are, and how it also might show up in your adult life. First of all, having parents or primary caregivers or siblings, teachers, important individuals who may have generally or consistently mocked you, teased you. I definitely will say that parents who tend to have patterns of a lot of screaming and raging and yelling, and yes, using physical discipline, can be a very shame-filling experience. If you think about how we have historically used physical discipline in this country and others, it is a humiliating experience to be disciplined that way. And I do believe that yelling and screaming have become the new spanking, but the research is very, very clear. And I know that there's a lot of debate about this at times, but if you think about getting a child to comply by being physically wounding, yeah, they're going to comply in the moment. But the research shows that the risk factors for other behaviors and internalized wounds get higher and higher as we as parents collectively engage in disciplining behaviors that are also physically hurtful and humiliating to the psyche and to the soul. But at a minimum, right, those things are going to happen. We can also see it in school dynamics where, boys will be humiliated for not fitting the prototype of what they're supposed to look like. I think that one of the big insults these days is calling a man short. And I think that is, I get the attempts at sort of trying to come after a misogynist for being that way. But the truth is that shortness can be a very, very shame-filled, and also open the door to bullying behavior for men, for young boys, and when their body doesn't fit a certain stature or type. And so that can be an internalized sense of shame. We see in girl culture a lot of behavior around passive-aggressive comments. Why are you wearing this? Or what's wrong with her that she thinks she can pull off that? Or a lot of backstabbing and that queen bee behavior. Even within the same friend groups, we can see a lot of this. And all of it is meant to sort of shame and punish and make them feel small, and it works. When we can, even though we may have been, let's say, in middle school or high school and shamed, we can carry that shame about how we dress or who we are our entire lives. And that is really the bottom line, that, as I said earlier, shame becomes this operating principle by which we set up our entire lives, trying to avoid it, but often really truly soaking in it and drenched in it. We can see things like financial shame, where we're comparing our socioeconomic status to somebody else, and that can be really shame-inducing. I live in an apartment and you have a house and a pool, and we're best friends. And every time I go to your house, I feel this less thanism, and it's not my fault, but maybe that contributes to watching my single parent struggle in the apartment and knowing that we can't, always pay our bills on time. Or maybe a parent skips a meal, and at this house, the snacks are everywhere, right? There's so many places where that can happen. And certainly in bodily shame, in this culture of, and just really terrifically damaging behavior around what your size is supposed to be, what your body mass and your, how toned you're supposed to be, or what size your rear is supposed to look like, right? It just becomes so much internalized shame about, no matter where we look, if we really are quickly looking, there's a million places to not feel good. And that shame can really become, as it is related to, a disgust with ourselves. And that is really, really true in the toxic shame of childhood wounds. Now, the role of shame in emotionally unsafe, but really any unsafe family, cannot be understated. Because when we're talking about attachment, if we're talking about primary caregivers, or even if it was grandparents raising us or whoever, if the underlying message is you're not good enough, like let's say when you drop or break things, we get screamed at. If we are mocked or teased, like I said, or maybe our identity doesn't match on the outside who we feel as we are on the inside, and that is never accepted, or we are denied access to our true selves because our parents or religion doesn't believe in honoring us for who we were born to be, all of that shame can be really difficult to overcome. And so, as I've been saying with these videos I'm going to be making, I want to try to end each video with something you can apply or do or think about to address these issues. And so here are 3 strategies you can use. Really quickly, I will say, as part of my course on remothering, which you can check out down below, the link to, what I believe is that the shame voice we often use in ourselves is often the internalized voice of our caregivers, of society, of our story. And that shame voice is being spoken to the inner child through the inner language of the inner parent. I do believe that mothering as an essence, not necessarily as a gender or specific dynamic, but whoever is supposed to be that most nurturing person to you, is the voice we take on the most and what we most believe about ourselves. And so if you believe I am, stupid or unworthy or sometimes weird, I'm going to internalize that, especially when it comes down to a lot of emotionally unsafe environments around, like I said, a lack of predictability, a lack of being seen or attuned to consistently, to being exposed to yelling and screaming and unhealthy practices in parenting. And so the first thing is to try to understand and maybe journal or write about, where do you think your core shame began? Maybe writing about a few examples of memories you have, and then trying to transfer that and make connections to what your triggers are. What triggers those shame things? Is it the way you look at yourself in the mirror? Is it when a partner says something just it slightly feels like it doesn't feel like, it's just feedback, but you internalize it as criticism. And so you get defensive or extremely wounded, even though they're just giving you feedback like, hey, I really like it when, I really appreciate it if you would, put the dishes in the dishwasher after you use them. But you hear you're doing something wrong, and that then dominoes to you are bad and what's wrong with you, which what's wrong with you is a very commonly hurtful statement. Most parents have said it, but over time, what you're really relaying to a child is there is something wrong with you, not with what you did or the choices that you made. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is to learn and develop what I believe are really important reparenting practices. And this applies to both how you set up your life and sort of like around boundaries and what you will and won't accept, trying to work on your identity and who you are, building up a sense of who you are, in addition to reparenting practices like learning how to love on your inner child, which is also in my course. But you can find this lots of places. But the idea is that there are certain things we can say and do when we want to say, oh, you're so stupid and dumb, why'd you do that? When we break something, and to say, no, take a breath, check in with your body, try to calm your nervous system. Even when I said that, it triggered something in my own chest, right? To say, you're just human. It's okay. People drop things and they break things. And maybe you just want to slow down a little bit. Maybe you're tired today. Just try to love on yourself and slow down. It's okay. It's just a glass or whatever, something like that. But also, I believe you have to set up your life and do things that demonstrate that your inner child is worthy of love and acceptance and respect and dignity. And that looks like everything from self-care, meaning not just a manicure, but literally like feeding yourself and trying to get sleep and trying to take a walk, or saying no to things that you know are going to drain and stress you out, and stop being a caretaker and a yes person to everyone but yourself. And so that is part of the 3-part protocol I developed, where I really focus on self-soothing, self-safety, and self-nurturing. So like I said, you can check those out for more. And I'll have a little bit of that in the journal I'm making, just a reference to that stuff too, which you can use and do exercises on. And lastly, to set up your life in a way, like I said, that reflects your worthy in all the parts of your life. And so you really are looking at strategies that help care for you, mind, body, and soul, relationships, and then to learn the language of how to recognize when you're not setting up your life that way, and to then implement those strategies. So I might have blended them all together there, but those are what I think are helpful. But never forget how this shame dynamic literally does live in our body. We feel shame in our bodies no matter what. And it lingers and lives there, especially in traumatic childhoods. So I hope you found this helpful. For more information or resources, like I said, check out my courses. Please check out my TikTok and follow me there, where I post every day on mental health topics. And I do have a few more resources on my website, I think on drkimsage.com. I think I have a checklist there, and like a list on how to talk to your partner about attachment wounds, all kinds of things like that. So thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe and well. Don't forget that you are worthy of wildly loving yourself. And as someone reminded me in a post yesterday, is that even if you were loved wildly, meaning without, any kind of control, and that was a bad thing, at the core, you are truly worthy of healing your life. So I will see you guys Monday. Have a beautiful weekend, and please take good care. Bye.